Thrifted just... Today, we're gonna kickflip this chair.
Thrift flip.
You launched that thing. I found this chair for 15 bucks, but it's a little bit beat up, so let's reupholster it with leather for the new studio. My name is Corbin, leather specialist here at Sailrite. And as you can probably tell by my haircut, we filmed that intro over 3 months ago. We got caught up with some other projects, but it's time to revisit this chair and complete its transformation. As a leather worker, I want to figure out some way to incorporate leather into this project. So instead of taking the traditional route and reupholstering the entire cushion with leather, I want to do a combination of leather and canvas, which is my second favorite material. My design idea is to use the leather panels for the top surface of the cushion while covering the edges with the duck canvas. I also have one more thing in mind to add to this chair that's going to solve a problem for me, so stick around until later in the video to see what that is. And I've done some prep work off camera with the leather so that we can focus on the upholstery part of this video. But all I've done is cut the general shape of the seat cushions out of 4 to 5 ounce veg tan leather, and I treated it with a little bit of neat's foot oil and set it out in the sun to darken. I've also disassembled the chair to take some measurements and use the old seat cover as a template. And I think these materials will look great together because of their different colors and textures, plus some stitching will make the design a little bit more interesting. But there's no way to know for sure until we try it out, so let's get started. Let's start with the seat base because I think it'll be a bit easier than the seat back. And if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm not an upholstery professional, but luckily we do have a few of those around here. So I've been studying up on some of our DIY videos to prepare for this project. I cut a 17 by 22 inch panel of canvas, which is the size of the cushion plus 3 inches on each side. I set that aside because I need to sew on the leather panel before moving any further. I cut the leather into a 15 by 10 1/4 inch panel, which is about ½ an inch smaller on all sides compared to the seat cushions, since I want some of the canvas to be visible. I added a radius to the corners that matches the shape of the seat. And then finished all the edges by beveling and burnishing them. I scored a stitch line with the wing dividers and began plotting out the placement of the leather onto the canvas. I used the back side of our 36 inch straight edge since it has a 0 center, making it perfect for centering things. Once the leather was in the correct position, I made a few small marks to guide me as I glue the 2 pieces together. I used Phoebing's Leathercraft cement on the leather piece and pressed it onto the canvas with the roller tool. I gave that a few minutes to dry and sewed it together using a size 18 needle and Tex 90 bonded nylon thread in the walnut color. I thought the dark brown thread would match nicely with the metal frame of the chair. I repeated this process for the seat back as well. I marked and cut the shape from my template, finished the edges, glued the leather onto the center, and sewed. Next, it was time to upholster the fabric to the cushions. The padding is pretty old, but this is just a workshop chair, so I'm not gonna replace the foam for this project. I had to be careful to make sure the leather panel was in the proper position, so I started by setting a couple of temporary staples into the seat backer board to keep the fabric in place as I worked my way around. I began at the 90-degree corner. I stapled until I was about 3 inches from the corner on both sides, making sure the fabric was tight. To remove some of the excess fabric, I folded one side down and cut a straight line a ½ inch from the edge of the seat. I then folded the fabric in the opposite direction and did the same thing. I trimmed off all but 2 to 3 inches of the excess fabric from that corner. I also cut a 45-degree angle from that other flap so that things lay flat. And after removing the bulk, I stapled the corner flap down, trying to get the corner as tight as possible. Then I moved to the adjacent corner, which is rounded. For these corners, I stapled up to about 2 inches from the curve and trimmed some excess fabric. I then pulled the fabric tight and created pleats around the corner, aiming to make them even so I could replicate the same effect on the opposite side. The pleats are hardly visible, but I thought it'd be a nice detail. I repeated these processes on the 2 remaining corners, working in a star pattern to ensure that the leather panel didn't shift too far to one side, kind of like installing lug nuts on a wheel. The seat back was slightly different since I wanted to replicate the pleats from the old chair. I used the template I made from the old fabric to cut the reliefs before stapling anything. I added basting tape and folded over the edges of the center flap so that there's no exposed edges. Then I repeated this on the other side. Then I found the correct position for the leather and set some positioning staples in the backer board. I stapled the middle section up to the corners. I folded the flaps in half and stapled them down, working from the outside in as I made the pleats, trying to make the top and bottom sides look as symmetrical as possible. These edge match pliers did a great job of keeping the fabric tight in those hard to reach areas while I stapled it down. I smoothed out the corners as I went and finished them by stapling down the center flap. To finish it up, I repeated that on the other side. Alright, and the hardest part is over. I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Even amount of canvas all the way around and nice uniform pleats on the back side. I wanted to reinstall the little nameplate that was on the back of the chair, and I thought it'd be good to add one of our leather tags. I had to trim the edges slightly, but other than that, it was a perfect fit. Before I attached the seat base and completed the chair, I wanted to hide the staples and exposed wood on the underside. I found some black Sattler marine grade fabric from Chelsea's scrap pile to use, and this fabric is probably overkill for this application, but it gives me a good excuse to use the hot knife for the first time, which is one of the coolest tools we have. I cut out a shape with the same dimensions as the leather panel and punched holes for the bolts to pass through. And here's the extra thing I mentioned earlier in the video. I made this pocket to hold my thread snips and seam ripper. I have a bad habit of misplacing both of these tools, so I'm going to attach this to the chair so these items will always be right by my side when I need them. I determined the best placement for the pocket and then attached it to the seat with screws. And if you want to know how I made this, let me know in the comments and we can do a separate video on it. I placed the lining fabric on the bottom of the chair and stapled it down. And now that the black fabric is installed, all that's left is to screw everything together and take my first seat in the new look chair. Feels pretty good. And my favorite parts of this project are just all the small details that went into it, like reusing the nameplate from the old chair and recreating the pleats that the old chair had, as well as adding my little pocket here for my snips and seam ripper, and then finally just adding a piece of leather here to kind of tie in the whole design together. I think the leather and canvas combination turned out great, and the leather pads will increase the durability, helping this old chair last even longer. And it was a ton of fun to try upholstery and learn a new skill. New types of projects can be challenging because they're unfamiliar, but they're so much more rewarding once you figure them out. And that is a wrap for this video. It's been a great learning experience working on this chair, and it's proof that a leatherworker can do upholstery, even if I made some unorthodox decisions. If you have an upholstery project for yourself that you want to tackle, I'll have all the products and tools that I used in the description of this video if you need to pick any of those up. And you can click over here to subscribe to the channel for more DIY inspiration, and then you can watch some of these videos. I've got a good one here and here. I don't know which one you like better. Maybe you'll like both. How about you watch both? See ya.